Hey parents, Carmine here with your video review of Rise of the Tomb Raider. Rise of the Tomb Raider didn't get as much of a marketing push as I expected, and the stuff the developers showed at E3 last year didn't look interesting at all, which is really unfortunate because this is one of the best games I played last year. Compared to all the other holiday releases, this is definitely the most solidly written. You know how Battlefront feels like playing Star Wars? Well, this feels like you're playing Indiana Jones. It has a campy premise involving a major world religion, a violently zealous cult, and a powerful yet mysterious superweapon capable of giving great power and everlasting life to the one that wields it. The mix of action and platforming plays very well together, and as a result, this title feels like a significant improvement to its predecessor. This is everything that a sequel should be.
I'm not feeling particularly trusted.
Violence is the only major factor in this game, and even that isn't much of an issue. There are plenty of ways to engage the enemy, but I found that stealth is the easiest by far. Lara is a strong woman, unafraid to defend herself when necessary, but she is not invincible. There are plenty of enemies, especially the ones in heavy armor, that will put up a considerable fight. If the player chooses the stealthy route, there are silenced weapons and guns that the player can use, but ammunition is very hard to come by, so I stuck with the bow. Arrows are always silent, make for great distraction, and can always be retrieved. Hits from almost all projectile weapons, excluding those with special ammunition, something that I'll cover in a moment, will result in a small amount of blood. How noticeable the blood is depends on the distance to the target, the type of weapons used, and whether or not a weapon has an optic attached with a zoom. More powerful semi-automatic weapons like the bow can kill in a single headshot to an unarmored enemy, and as a result give off significantly less blood. But hitting an enemy with a fully automatic weapon at close range, like you're seeing right now, will give off noticeably more blood. Like I said before, the stealthier method was definitely the easier option, even if it did require more patience. So most of my kills were from medium to long distance and with a bow, and as a result I saw blood much less frequently than the few times I used an automatic weapon. Now, there are a few weapons or ammunition types that have different effects. The bow is the most obvious of these, since the player can equip explosive, poison, or incendiary arrows, but it is not alone. Explosions do not cause any gore, and poison arrows just make the enemies choke and die without any other noticeable effect, but incendiary weapons and objects, like a lantern, can ignite an enemy, completely engulfing them in flames. This is further compounded if the hapless enemy is near an oil slick at the time. There are some scenes and locations that contain more violence than others. This Tomb Raider lacked many of the gruesome and violent deaths that were possible in the previous game, but enemies being stabbed or shot were visible in a few cutscenes. This is especially true for this cutscene, where an enemy has his eyes gouged out by the thumbs of the main antagonist. But despite the violent content you just saw, this is not a particularly violent game. Even if you don't engage in stealth like I did, a huge chunk of my time was spent solving platforming puzzles or hunting for crafting items to upgrade my weapons and equipment. These activities are all completely non-violent and comprise a huge part of the main story, and almost all of the side quests. Even in the segments that did have combat, most of my time was spent sneaking around looking for items or lining up the perfect shot so that I would not get caught.
Unity operates.
Is that a no?
It's a no fucking way!
Mature language is present in this game, although it's used extremely sparingly. I spent 30 minutes going through my footage just to find a single example of language. It's definitely there, but it's so rare that I say the total count for all the language used is around a dozen or so. And for a game that lasts me over 30 hours total, that time to swearing ratio is amazing. There are plenty of times when I expected Lara or the enemies to use mature language, but very, very few times when she actually did. No other category has any content of any real significance. Overall, Rise of the Tomb Raider is not nearly as mature as its predecessor. If this game's violence was constantly present, like in a first-person shooter, it would probably warrant a higher age rating. However, due to the fairly low ratio of violent content and mature language to the total time spent playing this game, we gave this game a recommended age of 12 years old. I'm working my way through Metal Gear Solid 5 right now, but it's a lot longer than I expected, so I'm going to make videos for a few other games I've been putting off. But Metal Gear will definitely be coming within the next couple of weeks. As always, let me know what you think in the comments, and look for the next review soon.